You're listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.
My two girls, everybody thought we were in the military because I kept taking coaching jobs.
So it was similar,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah, pretty similar. I'd stay 8-10 years and, I'd say, okay, let me go find it. Or somebody come looking for me and say, we need to build this program. You know how to do it. So then I would go.
So when you were building programs, did you enjoy that? Or was it something that you kind of took on because it was a challenge, but at the same time, it was kind of like, once you had something going and it was flowing well, I'd imagine you'd want to stick with it. Or did you like the building?
I think I really liked the building because in the beginning, there weren't a lot of women's teams. I started to coach and many schools then became, more, all right, let's start a women's basketball team. Let's start, so, and the other thing is I was really wanting to be one of the pioneer women to be a head coach for women, not having the men. I was just reading something just a few minutes ago and it talked about at the present time over 45% of our head coaches in Division I women's basketball are men.
That's currently?
Currently.
So when you started coaching, how many women coaches were there?
Well, in 72, when Title IX came, women administrators, you had women administrators, you had female, and then you had the male athletic director. So what do? Most of the time, people hire who they look like and who they could relate to. So at that time, the men weren't really interested in coming in women's game. There was no money.
Yeah.
And so there was 98% were women head coaches.
Wow.
For many years.
Yeah.
Kind of dropped a little bit, but then got back up again. And as soon as they started to make money, the men came to our side. Because you're talking some women and men coaches right now are making, $2.5 million.
Wow.
Yep. So they're getting up there. Not that I mind them. I'm not in that kind of ballpark, and many are not. Don't get me wrong. Everybody is at that point, but I'm really an advocate for women coaching women.
Yeah.
Not that men cannot be assistants. But, and my husband always tells a story. He was one of my assistants at a couple places. And we would walk into a room, with the team, or would be someplace. Oh, there's, Arizona State or Bucknell. And they'd come right up to him and say, oh, coach, welcome, whatever. And so, no, she's the head coach.
He'd say, no, you need to go over there.
Yeah. So he always got a kick out of it. But that just really showed him, we got to change this thinking.
Did you find that irritating, or was it something that you were kind of, it's got to be irritating, but at the same time, it's kind of, I guess, it's a custom of the time, so you can't really, it's got to be irritating, but you still kind of see it as something that happens pretty regular, especially back then. Did you ever take offense to that, or was it kind of a motivating thing for you, or was it just kind of water off a duck's back kind of thing?
Well, I'm not sure early days that I appreciated things like that because I had another male coach at one point at another school, and they do the same thing. And I just know my staff was like, "Oh no, you're looking at the wrong person.
Redirect them pretty quick."
Yeah, don't be asking me. So and I think it's a learned thing, and now it's a little different. We were just a few minutes ago talking about going to talk to the school and. As I told the story, especially to the 5th and 6th graders who understood a lot of stuff I was saying, more so, I had said to them, when I was younger, the girls played over here and the boys played over there. And girls didn't play with boys during recess and boys didn't play with girls. Now, I did, and many times I was told, hey, you can't play with the boys. Like, why not? But now, I said, look, you all are sitting, boy, girls, you mixed up here. You guys, you don't know that kind of life. You don't know that culture.
Yeah. So, last time we talked about your past. So for people listening, You were part of the 1976 Women's Olympic team. It was the first one, right? In
That
Russia?
is correct. Yep.
And y'all got second place.
Second place.
And then also you got gold in the Pan Am Games.
Yes, that
And,
was.
and you got another medal in, remind me,
Yes.
Montreal.
In Montreal, we got the silver medal in the Olympics. Prior to that, I have a 75 Pan American medal. Also, I have a 1973 silver medal from the World University Games.
And you're in the Hall of Fame for...
In the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, and also the National American Polish Hall of Fame as well.
I feel like you need security just to kind of guide you around all the time. Like, I half joke with the girls when I call you a national treasure, but you're pretty damn close to it.
Well, I thank you for that, and I really have been blessed with everything that's happened, but there are so many women like myself, and you probably even have some siblings that really paved the way for the next group.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and I obviously had the talent, but there were so many people even before me.
I think that's one thing that I wanted to touch on this time around, because from the other podcast, when we got done, I was like, man, I wish I would have asked her more about the road to become an upper tier athlete. I've got some nieces and nephews that are starting to make their run through high school, and I think some of them have some pretty good potential to go to play on the college level. And I love being encouraging of the little ones, and I always think that there's a time when kids are small that you just want to keep them engaged, right? But there comes a time when the competitive aspect needs to start kicking in. And so for you, when did it go from something where it was kind of, I'm just having a good time with my siblings, to, hey, I've got some potential to do something with this and maybe see the world? And so I'd like to hear about that. But at the same time, your perspective from being a coach, there comes a time, I would imagine, when you're no longer playing for fun and there's a possibility that you could pay for your schooling with playing sports, or even travel the world playing sports. What does an athlete look for, and what does, I guess, a supporting person, whether it's a coach or a family, look for in that athlete? And when do they start pushing them to make it more of a serious thing than just something that we're doing for fun?
Well, times have changed quite a bit since I was younger. But to go back to my younger days, I had an older brother, 2 years older, and he was all into every sport: baseball, football, basketball. And a lot of times, in order for him to go to the playground, he pretty much had to take me with him. And so he did, and that's where I learned to play. And I grew to love sports, just to be outside doing something else. I was not a gal that followed her mother around to clean house or to cook. Till this day, I still don't know any special recipes that my family had, so I really don't have anything to hand down to my girls or my grandchildren. But there was that passion, and then the drive began to come to be a better player. Years ago, there wasn't very many scholarships being offered. They probably weren't offered until, I want to say, in the mid 70s. And so when I went to college, my parents paid for it. And after I was there a year or so, then that's when I was offered some money because I was an athlete. So the passion, I think for me as an individual, when I realized that there were international teams that I could participate in, after the first one, then I thought, I want to be on these teams. When we were competing in 72, 73, 74, 75, there was not a mention of 1976 for women's basketball to be in the Olympics. In fact, I was just reading part of a story that said it wasn't till about a year before the Olympics that they put in women's basketball.
Oh, really? Is that quick?
So, well, and they have been pushing. They had been pushing the couple Olympics prior to that. Well, Mexico City in 68, and then you have the Munich in 72. And while it was talked about, it just was put by the table. No, it's not going to go. And so when they did decide to do it in 76, the men have 12, 15 teams, right? And they have their pool play and so on. Well, they decided we're just going to have 6 teams, and you have to win, the Worlds, or you have to win this, or the pre-Olympic tournament. So, there was really only 5 teams that they can get, because the host team, obviously Canada, was able to be in it. And now it's very similar to where the men are at. So I see this not only in basketball, but I also see things in softball, as we did have softball in the Olympics. We didn't for a while, and then they took it away. Now they're talking about bringing it back. So I think women still are being marginalized in many ways. As far as being a young person, I think the love has to be there. I think many times we as parents want our kids to be active, but then we have parents who say, I couldn't do it, but I want my child to do it. The good thing happening now, which is probably over the last 15 years, is that we have men in positions financially, owning corporations and so on, that yes, they push their sons, but when their daughters came, hey, I want my daughter to have opportunity to do this as well.
Yeah.
So the funding started to come for AAU teams, and when they were traveling, when they were 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th graders, they wanted their daughters to have the same opportunity as the men do. I think sometimes it gets a little bit difficult for people that are supporting them, because you don't know how far to push them.
Yeah.
And when I talk with some people that they were great athletes, but their son or daughter wanted to play, they would always say, if you want help, I will help you. Now, I do know some people that said, no, I knew they were going to be good, so I told them, you're going to play baseball, and I'm going to help you get there. So I think the one thing is to keep them active, to find some sport that they're pretty good at and that they love to do, that you see them out in the backyard throwing the ball against the house, or you see them dribbling the ball in the house. You see that passion for that. I don't think we see enough of that because of all the inside technology things that they do have. And I'm not going to say anything about that, because the gamers, I'm telling you, they have moved up in this sports world.
Yeah, they have.
Sitting there with their $1,000 game seats, and I'm thinking, wow, we've come a long way in that department. And I think as they get older into high school, then we usually find somebody saying, I'm pretty good in this. To be like me saying, I want to be a trackster and I want to run. I'm not very, long distance. I'm not very good. Can I beat you from here to there? Yes, if you're playing basketball. But if you are truly a runner, I could compete in high school, but I would not be a highly talented runner.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people have to look. But right now, with young people, just to keep them engaged and keep them opportunity to see things. As I look at 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds, you want to do swimming? Let's do swimming this summer. Okay, we're going to get you in swimming lessons. How'd you like that? All right, you want to do gymnastics? Let's try that. The recreation programs they have at the YMCA, there are so many opportunities that if you're a member, there's a lot of exposure that they would get to
just
be able to do
different
that.
activities and things.
Yep.
I've got a buddy of mine, and when his oldest son was younger, he's I think a junior now, and he is a quarterback at Smithson Valley up in Bulverde. And when he was younger, he told his dad that he wanted to be a professional football player when he was younger. And so, who doesn't, right? But it was very interesting because, I don't know if he's very rare, maybe. I feel like he is, but it was interesting because he was very cerebral. So when him and his brother would throw passes, he'd run over the barbecue pit. There was a piece of paper and a pencil, and every time they would run a play, he'd run to the barbecue pit. And I asked my buddy, I said, hey, what's he doing? And he said he's keeping stats on how many passes he gets to right, left, and center, and how many he's catching. And he did it on his own. And he would see where he was not doing as well, and he would work on that side. And again, my buddy told me, he said, one day the little boy would get up, and he was maybe, 10 or 11 or something at the time. And he said he'd get up and he would start exercising like 5:30 in the morning. And he talked to him and said, hey, you don't have to do this. You're a kid, be a kid. And the little boy said, no, Dad, I like it. It makes me feel good. So my buddy started getting up early in the morning, working out with him. And so he had told him, he said, there's a lot that goes into being a professional athlete. And he says, there's so many people going after so many positions. So you can be a great athlete, but there's still some other things that need to happen in your favor. So I'll help you where I can. And it's interesting to see how focused he's been and how my buddy and his wife do a great job of keeping the kids engaged in the sports that they choose. And it's a full-time job for those two, And so part of me kind of wonders, can you burn a kid out? Because it seems like nowadays, and maybe it's always been, and I've been out of the loop, but it's like there's a season all year long. And it's important to get repetition. But I had a nephew that used to play Pop Warner football, and it was by the time he ran the football and he played linebacker. But by the time he was in high school, or even before that, he already had knee problems and lower back problems, and he wasn't as healthy as he could have been, maybe, And so there's a lot that goes into it. I'm sure there's nutrition and fitness, and even my buddy's son, who's the quarterback right now, he's been having back problems and issues and stuff like that. So it's kind of like to have you here and to be able to ask somebody that's hit the pinnacle, what can somebody expect when they want to be the best at what they choose to be, whether it's sports or work or whatever it is? What do regular people like me, what are we missing? What are we not seeing that people like you did when the doors were closed or in the middle of the night? What were the different things that you did to, separate yourself from just everybody else who wanted to play basketball?
As you were speaking, I just have to say that I just love to play basketball. I didn't want to be inside. And the more I played, the more I wanted to play. And I told a story yesterday as I was speaking to the students that years ago, I wasn't as good. I developed that, but my brother drugged me along. And on the basketball court, until I could actually dribble and pass the ball and be halfway decent, he just drugged me along, and I had to practice on the side myself. And when they went down the other end, then I got and shot 2 or 3 shots and got off as they were running back down my end for a free throw. For a fast break. And I would shoot some free throws in between, but it's almost as if I had learned that I had to work in order to even get to that point. And the competitiveness that the guys had, I wanted to be as good. I wanted to be better than them. I never felt at any point that my parents or my brother forced me to play. It was always encouraging. In fact, my mother, she would always say to me, put down the ball. There's nothing for girls to play basketball. And, you'd hit it against the wall or the ceiling, and then the ball was taken away. And, so I think for young people,
what's interesting, not to interrupt you, but when you said that, the first thing I thought was your mom was correct. But what your mom didn't see was you were building that. What wasn't there initially, that you were building that. And that just blows my mind.
Well, and I can see her saying that because during her generation, there was really nothing other than if you played in the picnic, because they all worked in factories, they had the summer picnics for their factories, and then the women got to play softball. But you know what I mean? So there wasn't really anything organized. And for me, there wasn't anything organized for me until 7th grade. And it was like maybe 10 games, and that was it by CYO. Mm-hmm. And so, and the other thing is that I just feel like the young people now, and this poor COVID just kind of threw a lot of them, right? they are at a point where they're not sure what makes them happy. But people are trying to tell them what they think makes them happy. Oh, hey, look, you did a great job. You should be this kind of player. You should be play this sport or that sport. But I think as a young person, and you mentioned a couple people already that you know, they get to high school, you can see that passion. You can see, and if they want to do it, they don't usually burn themselves out. It's the adults to put in pressure, or the coach putting pressure, burning them out and not allowing them sometimes to play more than one sport. Some schools are like, no, you play this sport and that's it.
Yeah.
We played all kinds of sports. I think that's why, for me, playing with the guys all the time, you're playing all kinds of different sports, your agility and your movement and so on. You learn a lot other than just dribbling the ball, passing it, maybe running down, playing a little defense. When you're playing other sports, you certainly develop a lot. But I do think that the young people, by the time they're in high school, I also think you'll find that passion, but then it's the journey and not if you don't get there, you're a failure.
Yeah.
And I think this is where sometimes it becomes very mind-boggling for people, is because they see that this quarterback has some talent. Okay, should he go to Texas? Should he go? You're like looking at schools, and you have to look for what is the good fit. So I would say most kids that are playing high school sports, there's probably a school for it. There might be the junior college route, the community college route. Not everybody. There's less than 1% that even goes from college into the NBA. But everybody thinks they're going to get there.
That's that's scary that it's such a small percentage, But there's the it's crazy because there's this whole let's be serious and let's face reality, and it's like, no, let's not give up on the dream, And I think at times. I got another nephew, and I feel terrible for him because I was always a jerk. But when he was smaller, he said, I want to be a professional football player. And I remember thinking to myself, because I try and not discourage, especially when they're younger. But I remember thinking to myself, well, we've got to take into consideration genetics, right? Short Mexican kid is probably not going to make it to the NFL. You've got to have some size to you. You've got to have, and I'm talking 5'2", 5'3". There was a Muggsy Bogues and a Spud Webb, but those are extremely rare cases, So,
but you keep encouraging them, because if they can't play the sport, there's so many things they can do. They could be a radio announcer. They could be a manager. They could be an assistant coach. There are so many things that people can do. And it's interesting. A lot of times when I'm speaking to older groups, I have this thing, and I try to tell them that what happens, especially when I'm speaking with parents or coaches, what happens when a little child, 4 or 5 years old, says to you, oh, I'm going to be a football player. You're like, yeah. Then they become 8 or 9 years old. You're still saying, oh, sure. All of a sudden they get into junior high or a high school freshman, and people begin to say, oh, come on, be realistic. You can't do that. So what was okay for a while, now you're telling someone they can't do that. Instead of saying to them, hey, keep playing. If you enjoy playing, keep playing. There's lots of other things. If you don't make it to be a player, these are the other things that you can do. In sports management, there's so many things. And speaking to the school yesterday, and then, I do speak, I talked to them about having, people say, how did you get to the Olympics? What did you do? And I say it's just like you have to have 4 ingredients, just like when you make cookies, right? You have the batter, you got to put eggs in it, you got to put water, and mix it up, put it in the oven. You got to have it. And if you forget the eggs, then something doesn't happen, right? My 4 ingredients are dream, plan, work, and believe. So every time you dream, every time you think of something, it constitutes a dream. It starts to say, can I do this? I want to be a good basketball player. I want to, that's what I thought about. That's all I dreamt about, is playing basketball. I wanted to play with the guys if there was no girls' teams. And you do that for everybody in life. Like once you stop dreaming, you stop living.
Yeah.
Right? The second thing is you plan. So I was saying to the kids yesterday, hey, you all plan, like, are you wearing shorts tomorrow to school? You wearing your T-shirt? At the school you got different options. So that's what you do. You have this dream, and I put my finger here like this, and then you plan. And so I had the kids point, and here we're going to plan. So if you just have a dream and you plan, how could you make that dream come true? That's all it's going to be, is a dream and a plan. And the third ingredient that separates the people who make it from the people who almost make it is a 4-letter word, work. And so many times when I talk and I go like this, so the kids go dream, plan, work, So when they leave me, they say, yeah. So, but I was speaking to them about the power of yet. And I said, did you know about the power of yet? Y-E-T? And they're like, It's because when you work at something and you love it and you work at it, it doesn't come easy. In order for you to get even in people's business world, whatever they're going to be working with, you get a job and you don't automatically know how to do it all. So it's the power of yet. That means you work on it. And if you don't get it yet, you keep working on it, because eventually you'll get it. Yeah. I don't have it yet, but maybe tomorrow I'll get it. So with the little ones, I was telling them about tying a shoe or writing the letter A, and you get mad. I said, how many times people just give up or throw the paper and say, I can't do it. Well, no, it happens that you have to do it 20 times. And then the last thing is believe. You have to really learn to believe and trust yourself that if you do this, you will be successful. And I always had them doing this. So I don't dream, plan, work, believe. I had the whole group like yelling and screaming yesterday, every group. And it was fun, but they're going to go home and think about those things. Because anytime you do stuff with kids like that, they'll go home and they'll pick one or two things that they heard that they could latch onto. Because they're not going to latch onto everything, right? And so I really think when people decide this is what I want to do, whether it's in sports or their life, there is a method to the success. And it's so simple, because if that's what you really want to do, all of us do it. We dream and we plan. But that next part, that work, is the one that decides, are you going to make it? Are you not going to make it? And so along the way with young people, as I said to them yesterday, is that if you try hard and it's not happening, maybe it's trying to tell you there's like another little window. There's a door that maybe will help you get to something else that you like to do.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm glad that you said that, because I think so many times, and even as grown adults chasing a career, we have an idea in our mind of what the end goal is and what we want to achieve. And I think, because I'm guilty of it myself, when you say it, I think about the things where I gave up on certain things, or I didn't achieve what I had hoped, and I abandoned it. And there's things adjacent to your dream that can be just as fulfilling. So if it's wanting to be a point guard, in the women's Olympics, and you don't get there, there's other avenues and other things you can do that'll let you be a part of those things, and that you can still enjoy that portion that you have so deep in you, which is women's basketball or whatever it may be, right? I think a lot of times we feel like if we didn't get the ultimate goal, it was all a failure and we can abandon the entire dream. And, in saying that, I'm realizing how wasteful that thought process is, because you've invested so much time and effort and years into pursuing something that why abandon it completely? You know, you've invested so much into it, and look for another avenue, look for another window, you know.
Well, it's just like when young people are, try out for a team and they've worked 3-4 years for it, or even as, trying out for the Olympics, and they just miss it by 0.01 tenth of a second, hundredths of a second, or whatever. But that's where I say that's when you make that decision. Do I continue to do that, or is there another avenue? And we have to continue to know that our success and failure is not really who we are as a person. It's things that we do. So a lot of times people say, I'm no good at it. Well, no, maybe you're not good at that. You're certainly good at something else.
Yeah. You know, one thing that I love about talking to you is that, and I mean this with all due respect, but I don't feel that you were born with a silver spoon in your hand. You didn't come from a lineage of athletes that were in professional sports. You were a girl who had a passion and just kept working. And that work never stopped. And for the time period that you were competing, you hit the apex. And it's inspiring because, like, for me and people where I come from, small town, especially back in early 90s, mid 90s, there was only so many things you were going to do. You were going to work at the state prison, the federal prison, or the refinery. Outside of that, who knew what you were going to do? And it was interesting because when I reflect, and maybe it was partly just me, or maybe it was just the environment, but you didn't see anything past those jobs. The world was too big for you. You weren't, to even consider being part of the Olympics was mind-blowing, And for the majority of the kids that grew up there, going to a university that you see on TV was like, I can't go to Texas A&M. I can't go to Texas. I got to go to B County, which is 20 miles down the road. So not having, and again, I'm sure it was a time period thing, but not having the vision to be able to say, hey, there's so much more, and why not me? If I put in the effort, if I put in the work, if I stay focused, why can't I achieve things that are mind-blowing for people in this area? And so I feel like had I had a different mentality or thought process, I could have achieved more than being a plumbing designer engineering firm.
Never too late.
Well, my joints will tell me that it is.
Do I used to, in coaching, I would have the student athletes in the beginning of the year write down their top 50 things that they would like to accomplish, or do, not so much even accomplish, do in their life. And I used to have a list. And slowly, when I mark one thing off, then I'd put something else. And it was really a lot of fun. But it is a mind-boggling game, in a sense that I looked at it as a game, because there were some things I thought, we're living in Arizona and I want to be a bobsledder in the 84 Olympics. I'm gonna have to go up to northern Arizona. Here I'm coaching, doing this, so I think that a lot of times our dreams stay where it's fun up there, but once we start thinking about planning, it doesn't work. I don't think it means that we're a success or a failure. It's just something that we were not at that time ready to do. And a lot of times it's just the education. Yeah. It takes somebody to go. My mother and father both worked in factory. Neither one of them had gone to college. I think my mom finally, after we got a little bit older, she got her GED, went back and did some things within her factory and did some other things, and went back to college. And when my brother was going to college, now my dad, he worked for a Singer company, and he worked in the factory where, like, he had to measure certain things, and yet he didn't go to high school, finish high school. And yet he was so good with math. He amazed me.
Wow.
And did not go to college, and he could sit and help us with math like nobody's business. And I think when I talk about people doing things, I think of those two because they really made themselves, this is what I wanted to do, and they continued to pursue it. And I think that's where a lot of times when people, I say, you have to dream, keep dreaming about stuff. It really is fun to dream about stuff, and then you go, as you get to be an adult, all of a sudden it gets scary when you start to plan because it's going to take money, it's going to take more time, it's going to do this or that. And it's that discipline, the work that gets you there or not. I'm retired now 2 years, and I have said for a year or two I was just going to give my whole self to my family. And people had asked me to do one or two different things, and I was like, no, this is what I want to do. And now I'm looking and saying, what now can I do to give back? And so speaking at the schools, and in July I spoke at a basketball camp, and I love to speak. So, there's some things now that I'm looking at to say, what can I do to kind of give back now and share with people? Because a lot of times it's just that pushing people to do one or two things, or say, hey, you can go ahead and do it. We've got a friend back in New Jersey, and so when I was the athletic director at the college, we wanted her to come in. She was a fitness instructor. So we said, would you help us get our kids in shape, because there's a rule where you can't have coaches doing it in off season.
Yes.
Yeah, at Division III. So she said, well, I have to have an LLC, and I was thinking about doing it, whatever. I said, well, think about it. She thought about it, whatever she had to do for her application, she got it. She worked for us for about, a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And now she has her own business. It is amazing.
That's
and
awesome.
I see her on Facebook, and I'm thinking, she just needed a little push. And that's our job. We got to push each other to say, hey, you can do that.
Did you have a mentor?
I think I had several along the way, and that provided me with certain things. Like my Olympic coach, when I got into coaching, my head and assistant Olympic coach were really valuable. I think when I was a player, my brother was the one that really would tell me what I was doing right or wrong, and how to be competitive, and not giving up. And I think about that because I was one, as I was telling you about the book I was reading, and it had my name, and it had said that I was a fighter and would never give up. And I thought, where did I get that from? From my mother and father. Mm-hmm. They never gave up. And if I was on the court with my brother, some guy could be 6'5", and if I just stand back and let him shoot, he would be in my face. You play him. You get up there and play him. I'm thinking, okay. Push him a little bit. Push him harder. I'm like, okay, I'm 5'6". I can do this. But you just learn to be able to overcome all those obstacles.
I think I feel like having a mentor, and maybe this is, again, me being naive, but I feel like having a mentor is kind of an old way of doing things. But I think having a mentor is so important because, I'd say if it came down to the nuts and bolts, I had a few myself. But I think seeking the right mentor is very important because I feel like growing up in a small community, I didn't know what the world was like. I didn't know what existed. I didn't know what opportunities were out there. To even find a goal or a dream, my vision of the world or what was accessible or what was even available to do was very narrow. And I think if I had a mentor as I got older, even just through life, not even just being a high school kid, I think that would have helped educate me on what was available. So that way I could add something to my goal or my dream where I could say, hey, my nephew, a couple of them, I half joke with them. What are you going to go to college for? What do you want to do? And I don't know. They don't know. And so I always half joke and I say, you ever watch National Geographic and they're filming these whales out in the middle of the sea? I say, don't you go be that guy? You know, because that was something that, who even thought about that? You know, like I said, growing up, there's prisons in the area and there's a refinery, you know, pick one. And it was like to even think that could be a goal, that could be a job, to be a photographer or cinematographer, to go and film these animals in the wild. Imagine how cool that would be. You know, so I try and tell them that young, so it throws their mind way out there. And as they decide to reel it in themselves, they can say, okay, well, what else am I missing? What else am I not looking into? So I think mentorship's critical. I haven't done a good job of being a mentor or gaining a mentor, but I think that as a young person, especially these days where everything's, like you said, it's technology driven and it's in their bedroom, and, you know, to be able to have somebody say, hey, why don't we go check this out? Or why don't we go look at this? Or why don't we go check these things out? Or even getting into art, you know. I think my dad was a pretty good mentor to kids. He upset a lot of parents at times. He would have the parent that would come in and say, hey, I want my daughter to pitch. Dad coached little girls softball. And it was funny because when I asked you about, you know, starting over with programs, he was the guy that would get the brand new girls who had no clue what they were doing. By the end of the season, they were really good. So when they picked next year, everybody picked Bears girls. So he got all the new ones again. And I'd get upset because I was always wanted Dad to be one of the coach in the All-Star games, you know. And I'd say, doesn't that bother you? He's like, no. He says, because I want these girls to learn the right way, and I'm the only one that's going to teach them that. You know, but he'd get parents that would come in and say, hey, I want my daughter to pitch. I want her to pitch. And Dad would tell him, your daughter's not a pitcher. She's really good in the outfield, or she's really good at second base. Let her play where she's really good at, you know, because they get discouraged, and the girls wouldn't want to pitch anymore because the dad's going, I want you to pitch, and they're not doing well, you know. So Dad would put them in a place that they did do well, and eventually they would build that, and they did a lot better. Dad was a guy, he was a stickler for details. He would always, you know, instead of telling, hey, first base, second base, third base, he'd call out the numbers, and all the girls knew. They had ran plays, they did all kinds of stuff. But so I think in that aspect, he was a mentor. So when I was younger, he was probably my mentor. But I think as an adult, I wish I would have sought a mentor to help me with my career as an adult, which I think would have been critical and probably would have helped me avoid roadblocks. I learned the hard way, and Nina's the same way. But yeah, I just think that seek a mentor. It's a good thing.
Yep, a lot of times, I was going to say, throughout your life, I think there's mentors there that you don't even know about that help. You know, as I look back now of all my playing and coaching, I think about people and think, oh, I really should have asked them some more questions. You know, I should have maybe done this a little bit more with this athlete. Or I think about different things, and then I go, well, you know, that window's closed. Now what I do is help who I can along the way this way. Yeah. You know, and give people encouragement. And I know my family, they say how could I be so happy when I wake up in the morning? And I am, and I drive them. Both families are like, could you turn it down a notch? It's only, I haven't had my coffee yet. Because I'm like, hey, how's it going? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, there's a funny story they keep. You know, Ellen leaves very early in the morning, and, you know, there was a time where I would make sure I'd be down the stairs before her so I could say goodbye before she had to leave at 5 or 5:30 in the morning. And one time I heard her, and she sounded like she was almost at the front door, and I ran down, and I was like, hey, have a good day. And so they always make fun of, like, I have all this energy. So, you know, that's who I am, and that's part of me. And I know they get a little tease here or there, but, you know, I'd rather people say I'm that way than that I don't show that, you know, that I care, and it's fun. I think one of the things that I have learned a lot in the last 2 years that I have done well, and I want to even continue to do better, is to have people feel good about themselves. Yeah. You know, my coaching from my first day till the last day of coaching, same thing as an administrator. I look and I think the more I was positive with people and told them, you know, you've got to do it this way, but hey, right now you're doing okay, you know, and hey, look, get your head up. You know, it's another day. We don't have to worry about that. Let's think about tomorrow. Let's think about doing something else positive. And, you know, that's why I think a lot of people, my mother and father comes to mind because, about being mentors, because my mother told me I could do anything the boys could do. If they could do it, you could do it. You know, my dad always said, if you put your mind to it, you could do anything you want. So then I took those things, and I know I've instilled it in the girls and saying it, you know, to the little ones, the grandkids. And I think having that and the support, like with my brother, and then, you know, I married a guy who, like, I don't have no idea why he's still married to me. He's already
Mike's
got
a special guy.
Hey, he's already got a place in heaven. So I think when he goes, if he goes first, he's going to make sure he pulls me along there. If not, I'm going to have to just take the purgatory route for a while till he gets up there, right? But we'll be married 49 years, September 1st.
Wow.
Whoever's lasts that long.
Well, I told
just
Nina,
love
we've been married 13, going to 14, something like that. And I've told her I've never even had a job that long, you know?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But it's good that he's been so supportive. You know, I think it's in any relationship when somebody can be that supportive of somebody else while they chase and pursue their dreams, that says a lot about that person. You know, it's a good quality person when not necessarily, I don't want to say someone puts their life on hold for somebody else, but when they're enjoying being a supporter of somebody chasing their dream, you know, that's a powerful combination. Well,
and I think that's one of the reasons when, you know, people ask, "Oh, you've been married?" That's like, well, we became friends first, and then if I saw what made him happy, I wanted to make sure he could pursue what he wanted, you know, and he certainly has done that for me. But he probably would tell you a different story that, you know, I said, no, I don't want you to believe a police officer. I don't want you to be. But, yeah, he has been supportive. You know, Will Chamberlain holds the rebounding record, right, in the NBA. But they don't know about Mike Simpson because he rebounded for me for years. And he holds the record. They just don't have that in the record book.
Well, let me ask you one crazy question right now, because you talked about it before, I think in the cul-de-sac. The Brittany Griner issue. What do people need to understand, especially athletes, when they get to a certain level? It's got to be extremely important to be careful with what you do and when you do it and maybe who you do it around. And maybe not directly connected to her. I keep talking about this nephew of mine who's a quarterback, and I hope one day he goes on the next level. How many athletes as a coach, and what did you guys tell your athletes as far as who they surround themselves with and things that they do and how critical some of those actions are? You know, for you going to another country, I'm sure y'all had a lot of, I'm sure there was some conversations with y'all about how to behave and things to do. So as a student athlete to younger people, what are things that you would advise them on when it comes to getting to that next level? You know, and I'm not saying it's directly connected to her, but, you know, I would imagine at a certain point, there's so many people allowing you to do whatever you want, and you almost have to check yourself. You almost have to check the things that you do. You know, I think she got caught with, it was a minute amount, but it was something that was still illegal to be in that country, right?
That's correct. I think that my words, I guess, are you got to do what's right, and you have to be taught to do what's right. I think sometimes people are growing up and people are teaching them, yeah, you can go ahead and do that. you're an elitist. And people say, oh, look, that person's doing that. They're entitled. I think that's where we see a lot of success is people that do the right thing and to do their best when they're doing the right thing. So if you do your best and you still lose a basketball game, you do your best and you've studied, you've done everything and didn't get that A. You have to be able to live with that because it always at the end, to me, I think it shakes out. And the other thing I would say is to treat others like you want to be treated. You do your best, right? So you do what's right, you do your best, and treat others like you want to be treated. And I would say that we were versed on what to bring and not to bring into other countries. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that. I think sometimes in this busy world, people don't think about things, or maybe people travel a lot and last time it was not a big deal, nothing happened. And I'm not only talking about Brittany Griner, this goes along with a lot because as they want to talk about Brittany Griner, it was just announced the other day that a teacher who's been over there, 10, 15 years teaching, he brought in some into Russia, which people didn't know, but he's already been 6 months or so in jail, and now his name has come up saying, hey, let's bring him home, because he had, I think, a little more than what she had, but not significant. So I think when you travel out of the country, you have got to be very careful because it is not the United States of America.
Yeah. I always worry about younger folks because when I was younger, there wasn't access to so much. There wasn't access to so much technology. There wasn't access to so many, recreational drugs and things just is at your fingertips, And I always get concerned with them because there's a point where you leave home, you go to college, and you don't have the, authority of your parents around, and it's easy to make mistakes, It's easy to make a mistake to where it can affect your life for a long time, And when you're, like you said, when you're an elite athlete or there's a lot of people that are going to be the yes men and yes women, yes, do whatever you want, I think a lot of times we do things and we don't get caught and we think we're never going to get caught. I did it once, it's okay, But I want younger people to realize that at some point there's an opportunity that you will get caught. So you need to be careful. You need to be mindful with who you surround yourself with. I think one thing that my parents really instilled in us when we were younger was to do the right thing, whether people were watching or whether they weren't watching. So do the right thing. You know what's right and wrong. That's kind of how we were talked to, So it seems like today there's so many opportunities to make a slip up, and I hate to see that happen. She's a young athlete, she's in the prime of her life. This is a time where she should be making money, and not just her, but even, other people as well. But when they lose that opportunity, they lose freedom because they've made a mistake, it's heartbreaking because you'll know better than I do. That ability to perform at that level, there's a really small window. And when you're missing out on that time, you're losing on that window's closing on you. So that's just something that's scary, scary for my younger nephews that are getting older and going into college or, getting into high school. And, I had a conversation with another gentleman last podcast, and it's all these kind of recreational drugs that you're hearing about all the time. You're hearing more and more about fentanyl, things being laced with fentanyl. And he was an ex-drug addict. We're talking about it. And it's like that stuff's on everything now. It's so easy for a young person to take a joint or take a pill and it'd be laced with that stuff, and for them to end up passing from it. So it's scary stuff. It really is scary stuff. But we got too serious. Anyway, I really thank you for your time. We're hit about an hour, And so I just want to thank you for your time. I thank you for your conversation. Even just right now in some of the things we've talked about, I feel like I learn things still. At 45, I told you before, I'm a cocky person. I think I know it all. But then hearing about you talking about setting goals and setting dreams and even finding an avenue to hit adjacent to it, it's okay.
Hey, you just never want to be same old, same old.
Yeah.
But I think we all get into a little rut, and we got to find some things that get us out of the rut, or find some things that maybe we wanted to do and didn't think we can do it. But then we sit back and we go, well, we just have to adjust this or adjust that. But again, it takes work.
Yeah.
After you think about what it is you want to do and you plan on getting it done. Like, look how much you plan in your job with all those pipes and everything.
Oh, don't remind me. You know what? And one thing that I find interesting, and we'll have to do another podcast again, because I get lazy. I get real lazy. And across the table from me is a lady who has played at the top of her game, coached at the top of her game, and now is looking for the next thing, helping the kids, giving speeches. And I know you're going to do amazing at that stuff too. And I think I get lazy at times because I feel like if I set a goal and I achieve it, I can kick back. I'm done.
But the goal, it's the journey to get to that goal. Because so many times, even with young people, they do what it takes and then it's done. And then what do they do next? It's just like when I was showing the kids the medal, the kids were putting their hands up saying, oh, but I got a trophy. I got a medal when I played baseball. I got a trophy. And I'm like, that's good. But, okay, what are you doing next?
Yeah.
And I think that's what we do. It's like we work so hard to get there. And I think we all, and you're right, there has been a lot of things that have changed since you and I were much younger.
Yeah.
And the thinking is not trying to do your best. It's to get ahead, to be the best in the job. It's not trying to do your best. And someone asked me a question yesterday, and my answer to them was, you don't have to worry so much about competing against the person in front of you. You have to worry about yourself and how much better you can get from game to game. When you just say, hey, listen, I keep losing, well, okay, why are you losing? So this poor kid was asking me the question after it was all over about, he was just so frustrated because I don't think it was third grade. He just loves what he does, but he's not very good at it. But do you like it? Well, yeah, I do, but it's not always about winning. And there's I'm trying to think, a friend of mine told me that in basketball, up until, I want to say sixth grade, they do not keep score.
Oh, okay.
In their basketball program. They have lots of teams. It's like a recreation program. They have lots of kids involved, but they do not keep score until they get to seventh grade because it's all about learning and getting better. And the camaraderie with the kids are so different than I win, you lose.
Let me ask you something. How good does it feel to be, I just saw an image of it. How good did it feel to be up there with your grandbabies talking to those kids? They were holding that Olympic flag with you standing behind it. Like I told you, they were so stoic. It was something serious to those girls in that image, that photo that she'd taken. And I was thinking, that has to be a great feeling to be able to look at that and see how proud and serious they are, because it wasn't just...
I think they were scared to death standing up there. Like we practiced the day before, and of course Harper's doing this and closing, and now they're in front of everybody.
They look so serious.
They were very proud of me, and I don't think the Olympics and that has really hit. Yeah. I think even with my two girls, throughout the whole... They're proud of me, but being with me all the time, I don't think, even with myself, I don't think, wow, I'm pretty good. I'm reading this book about the 76 Olympic team, and I read today a couple things. I'm like, wow, I didn't remember I did that. That sounds pretty good. So, yep.
Well, even talking about the standing ovation in the book, it talks about you getting a standing ovation. And, it's crazy that is such a rare thing. And it's so amazing that it happened. And talking to you about it earlier, just like you missed it.
Well, that's why I read it, and I said, it says, and it was the final game of the Pan American Games, and they introduce each player, and my number was 15. I was the last player, and they had said how I was the hustler and the fighter, and I got the crowd together, whatever, excited. When I was announced, it says Juliene Simpson was announced, she got a standing ovation. And I said to myself, I don't remember getting a standing ovation for that. But I remember the kindergartners yesterday, every time I would say something, they clapped so hard for me. I was like, I had such a blast with them. They were so pure and so cute, and they were so good. There were like 100 of them or so. And then I'd say, and then I did this, and before I could finish the sentence, they're already clapping for me again. So, if I ever really need a good boost, I'm going back to that kindergarten class.
Well, what's so cool about that is, especially, the kids, but especially that standing ovation back then, was that you didn't realize it had happened. And it's so cool to think about the things that we do, if we do them the right way, and we carry ourselves the right way, we're having an impact on so many people that we don't even realize, and that's just you playing your game, playing your heart out, doing the best you can for you and your team. And all these people took notice that they stood up and they clapped for you. And it was just something that you did that affected and impacted them that greatly. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
thank you.
I'm not going to take any more of your time. I know you owe time to the girls. So I love you, Mema, and I thank you so much again for coming out.
This was fun. Thank you, and I appreciate all that you do and all your podcasts and all the people you put on. It's pretty entertaining. I could be listening all the way from New Jersey to here. So
when are we going to have you back down here?
Not sure.
Make it quick. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.